Welcome back to another episode of Bossy, Brilliant, and Badass. I'm Lisa Lindsay here with my marketable co-host, Liz Green. Hey, Liz, how are you?
Hey, good, Lisa. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm excellent. A little bit of a weird day, but whatever. It is what it is. We have a very cool episode coming up. Loving it.
I mean, I can't even wait to have her on. I'm really looking forward to talking about email marketing and content because that's something that I always need help in because I have like a pretty big email list, but sometimes I don't even know what do I do? Do I just keep sending them stuff about bar candy or, my coaching? Do I offer them a giveaway? I don't half the time I don't even know. And I feel like I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. So that's why I'm really looking forward to speaking with her because I feel like maybe she'll have some amazing takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of questions. The email marketing is the one thing I don't do because I'm just I feel like it's annoying because I think it's annoying. So I don't want to then turn around and annoy people.
Right.
So I always hesitate to do the email marketing. So it'll be very interesting to see what her thoughts are about this. I'm really excited. So it'll be really cool.
I am too. And I think, maybe one day we can actually hire her company. Her and her company. It's one and the same.
I mean,
wouldn't that be great to just have them do it all for us? And then
I know.
We're like, all right.
I know, so we have so many guests on that I'm usually like, oh, I want to hire you.
Me too.
Can you just do this for me instead of me having to worry about it? But I guess this is the next best thing. If we can't hire her, at least they give us some really good tips and information. Right. So, and I'm sure she will as well, because when we had our pre-conversation with her, it was so good. She had so much information. So I'm really excited. You want to introduce her?
I would love to. Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
So her name is Kelly Kelly, and she's the founder of Brand Method, which is a digital marketing agency focused on identifying qualified leads for their clients and then creating digital content to help convert those leads into sales, what we all want to do, right?
Exactly.
And so her company's service offerings include digital strategy, consulting, content marketing, podcast production, pretty cool, and website design. And she also hosts a popular podcast called Digital Dive Media. Welcome, Kelly. We're so excited to have you here today on the show.
Hey, Kelly.
Very excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Our pleasure. Welcome.
So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your journey and how you started and became founder of your own company?
Yeah, so I started in traditional public relations almost 20 years ago. Before I even knew that was a career, we didn't have social media. We didn't have reality TV that much back then to kind of highlight that. I didn't even know it was a job. And that was my first introduction into communications. I found that I had a passion for it. I liked curating a message and communicating that out. When I moved from New York to Atlanta, I decided to try my hand at entrepreneurship. I felt like I was ready. I had enough experience, or so I thought. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of hit the ground running and made it a point to meet as many people as I could and let them know, hey, I'm trying to start this PR company and just build a network. And that kind of morphed into a couple of other things, a creative studio, and that ended up only being rented out for baby showers. And so I've had a little windy road, but my passion always came back to essentially marketing. Mm-hmm. And once social media started to kind of creep in and become more popular, and I identified it as something that could be useful for a business. And quite frankly, digital to me seemed to be what people wanted from traditional PR. They wanted to quantify the reach. They wanted to quantify the exposure, and you just couldn't get that done as accurate with that. But with digital, I said, well, we can count their numbers, their analytics, there are all these reports we can make and just show you like the impact your social media activity is having. And so I switched my company to strictly digital marketing, and had an opportunity to join a women's only entrepreneur incubator at the top of 2018, which was amazing. It was a 15-month program, and it really showed you how to be a business owner, not just good at marketing or digital or whatever it is your craft was. And that just helped me to lay the foundation to be a founder and learn how to run a business, leadership, finance, all that type of stuff. So it's been a wonderful journey. I'm grateful for every single pivot I've ever made. I think it has shaped me into the person I am today. And I still feel like there's more growth to be had.
That's great. Yeah. So today we want to talk a little bit about email marketing and content. And, we haven't really discussed that all that much on the show. So what would your advice be, say, for new female entrepreneurs who are starting out, they feel overwhelmed. They're like, oh, I know I have to do email marketing. Where do I start? How do I even do this? So why don't you walk us through a little bit of what that looks like?
Absolutely. For advice for women entrepreneurs that are trying to get their start with email marketing, because it is essential to any business, I would suggest strategizing first. Sometimes people will just jump out and start shooting emails off. And really the only qualifier for them is that they say, okay, I'm only going to send one once a month or once every 2 weeks. Well, if you sit down and you do your strategy, starting with your actual buyer personas, maybe it needs to be every week. Maybe it needs to be twice a month. But you don't know that until you, number one, sit down and craft a strategy, and number two, test, which is something people don't like to do. If they don't get very good results off the first 2 campaigns, sometimes it falls off, sometimes they won't continue to do it. And my advice would be starting with the strategy, understanding what your audience wants to actually know about, not what you want to send them per se. And testing that. And one really good campaign to start off with would be, what would you like to hear from me or from us? What do you want to know about? We offer X, Y, and Z. You could even set it up as a poll or like a multiple choice. Most of the email marketing services allow you to integrate those type of things where people can just click a couple of buttons and say, I want to know about podcast production. I don't really care about strategy. I want to know. So you have the ability to craft your campaign out the gate to say, what do you actually want to hear from me? And then you take that information and that helps you get to the next step of what your campaigns look like. And then a really great, additional feature for most email marketing services are the automated workflows that are in there. So you don't have to do all this so manual. You can set it up to say, okay, well, if they click podcast production, then they get these next 3 campaigns over the next 2 months. And it goes out all automatically, which, is a time saver, number one, because our time is so precious, especially as a business owner. And you have all this reporting that you can look at and the numbers don't lie. Hey, people are opening, people are clicking, or they're not opening, they're not clicking. What do I need to pivot? Do I need to send out a re-engagement campaign and say, hey, we haven't heard from you, or we haven't, seen any activity in a while. Are you still interested? If they reply no or not at all, get them off your list. We got to keep clean list. Yeah, a lot of people are intrigued by the amount of email addresses they have, but if that audience is not engaging with your content, get them off of your list.
Mm-hmm. So that's great. So I want to actually ask a question that's a little bit of a step back, maybe a step before, sure. Which is, how do I even get people onto my list in the first place, right? Because we started from the point of we're brand new and we're just getting ready to get started. Where are these people coming from? How am I getting them?
Yeah, well, a great first step would be, especially in a COVID environment now, is that the content that you're putting out on your social media post, you can create lead magnets, but they have to be of value. And you have to take into account that most of us are pretty jaded by lead magnets, right? We can't just throw out this free list, this free swipe file, this free this. It has to be tuned in to what is going to be of real value to your audience. And that lead magnet can be a file, but make it be a juicy, good, valuable file or a template or something that your audience is really interested in, which would go back to your buyer persona. Also, you could do webinars. That's a good lead gen if you have good content to share and you're going to give a 30-minute presentation on something that's really niche and your audience is interested in. They might give their email address for that. And so then you build your list, and you have to stay patient. You know, our tolerance for what thrills us is getting really low. Like the wow things, or the things that we would even give our email address for free, are like not working as well as they once were. So you have to get creative. You have to stay patient. You have to pay attention to your audience. You have to figure out what they're engaging in. For example, we're running this campaign now is that we have a blog. So we can look on our analytics, on Google Analytics, and see which blog posts are getting the most attention. And so we'll take that information and say, well, let's create a freebie based around the podcast production piece, because that's where people keep going to the most on the blogs, and put that out there. That gives you a little more possibility of them engaging, because your reporting is saying these are the blog posts that people are going to more now. So maybe build a lead magnet around that. And then that can be used to help to build your list.
So basically you're saying, starting out or thinking about what you want to do, it's fine for you to have several different approaches, right? So for example, I am a coach, I mentor, and I'm also an HR consultant. There's probably a sliver of space where there's overlap for all three of those. That's entrepreneurship and leadership is what I would say. That's the overlap. And I can create a bunch of content that's about leadership, but maybe every now and again I create some HR content or some other sort of content, right, for myself. And you're saying starting out, it's okay to put those three things out there if those are the three audiences. I'm saying that right? That I want to try to capture, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. But then as time goes on, as you start to collect data based on traffic to your website or what people are responding to, you can start to narrow that and focus your attention more on the thing that's getting attention.
Absolutely. And that helps you kind of look at your personas and say, if I'm getting much more engagement on the page on my website that is specifically designed for leadership, or the landing page for that, then that's the audience. I need to nurture that audience with more of that. I don't need to bombard them with everything that I have, because I already can tell from the numbers they're responding to this. So keep serving them that. Now, of course, you can, add a little extra content in there and say, hey, if you're interested in this additional stuff, click here. But the bulk of it needs to be what their attention is already on. And you can get that information.
And so once we have a list, however we got the list, we have the list now. How do we nurture these contacts? Like, do we come up with new stuff? And I know you just said that, we can look through the analytics and whatnot, but how do we nurture these contacts and connections?
So ideally, what you would want to do is kind of start with that funnel approach. So even if you have narrowed down to, okay, this group is engaging a lot with the leadership content, how do I continue to nurture them? You've got an email list, number one. So you take your email list and you say, okay, well, the initial content should just be about value. I don't want to do an ask right now. Let me just keep serving them things that are what they want to know about, that's going to be helpful. And then you maybe kind of lead that into something else that's a little more going to put you in the category of consideration, because eventually you should ask. We're all in business, right? So you should be leading up to the ask, but you need to make it a process. So maybe the next 2 campaigns is still about value. And then you maybe invite them to a webinar, because a webinar, you're already set up to ask for, you're going to sell a product, or you're going to ask to join a course, or whatever the case may be. But it should be starting with brand awareness, value, and then whittling down to the ask. Additionally, what you could do, which is it's a little off topic of what we're talking about, but it should be considered, take that list and plug it into Facebook and run some ads, because you have the list. You have a custom list that you can upload, and more than likely that email address is being used for their Facebook page. So they'll be able to see that, reinforcing this person's already given me value. I've seen the ads, I've seen the emails, and 5, 6, 7, 8 down the road, now I'm getting, they're hitting for an ask, but I kind of trust them. They've given value. I know what they can do. I believe they're capable. I'm gonna go ahead and sign up for this course. So it's a bit of a dance. Your approach to digital should always be multi-channel, but email is a really good foundational element that I think a lot of people overlook. And there are things that you can kind of hook into your email strategy that will help reinforce, because people are spending obscene amounts of time on social media platforms. So we can't ignore that. But you also want that email list because that's yours. That's your data. You don't own the data on the digital platforms. Your list is yours, essentially, that you own.
I've heard you before speak about the 14 touch points.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, what does that even mean, a touch point?
Yeah, so the same theory in marketing that's been around for a while. It used to be the standard sort of pre-digital social. It was 7 touch points you had to make to get to make someone a customer, get them to convert. So you're making them aware of you, you're giving them a chance to consider you for the job. And then you're going in for the ask, and hopefully they will then become an advocate for you. It's that same traditional model. The only difference is, instead of, making someone aware of you through a brochure at a trade show, now you need to come up on their social feed. And they may keep scrolling. The first touch point will probably be very light. There are very few companies that are just hooking your attention out the gate in any way.
Right off the bat.
You're just kind of like,
right.
All right, I saw it, scrolling. But if you do set that foundation and you start with that touch point, so then you want another one. So in the consideration, you want them to consider you, you start firing off your benefits. Here's how we can help you in plain language, not our glossy corporate speak stuff. I should have built out a persona for you. And so now I'm going to craft a message that speaks to your pain point. If that is a persona that wants leadership, the message needs to be about leadership. The message does not need to be, I have all these things, pick one. You do the work and you figure it out and you pick it. No, as a business owner, you need to say, I'm talking to my leadership ideal client now. Let me use language that they respond to. When I was working with a custom home builder, and we were doing a hybrid of email marketing and social, and they offer custom home building, they offer roofing, they offer HVAC. Your HVAC guy does not care about your custom home build that's $2 million a pop. They want HVAC services, and they don't want to have to dig for it. So let's create content for that to speak directly to that persona, and then the other ones as well. So you have to do that more now, though, because the psychological impact of social, and because we're so tuned in and we're getting so much messaging, we phase a lot of stuff out. A lot of things don't get our attention like they used to, and that's just across the board. So you have to be creative and you have to be patient, and you do have to hit people more than once, more than 7. It's like 14 now before somebody's like, all right, I've seen enough. Okay. You seem qualified. I'll give it a shot. Let me see. But those first 7 are now like, no, I'm not giving you my email address. A freebie? No, thanks. I still don't really know you. It's just a longer dance now. And, as a business owner or a C-level market, you have to be more patient.
Yeah, that's all sort of always been something that I was concerned about, because I know how I respond to emails, which is I don't. Right. And I assume that everybody's like me, that they're not responding to emails. And it usually is just something very interesting and unique. Timing usually has to kind of come together perfectly for me to click open on an email. And I started thinking, okay, geez, what do we do during this time of COVID where everybody moved online, and then there was just a glut of everything? I think in March and April, there was like a webinar twice a day.
Oh, yeah.
Different. I was like, oh my God, it's just too much. And I was not responding to that at all. And it was really just about that 1 or 2 things that really captured my attention that caused me to go in. Or if I am in fact doing research, which always is annoying, right? Because then I get a phone call.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
oh yeah, you downloaded this thing. It was like, no, I was just doing some research.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that idea. And I mean, that seems to be a very, very difficult thing to do because like you said, there's so much stimulus. So how do you propose that someone try to find a way to stand out really when there's all this glut? Like, what are some thoughts that you have around that?
Yeah, you have to make room for testing, A/B testing through your email, A/B testing through your Facebook or your social media ads. You have to test. You're not going to get around it. It's not likely that your team internally is going to come up with the winning idea out the gate, one shot, let's hit it out the park on this email subject line. It's probably going to take some testing, and you got to be okay with that. You don't know what your audience is going to respond to, especially considering timing and just where they are in the journey, and you have to be patient with that. I'm on a few lists and I never unsubscribe from them because they usually hit me very detailed. These are typically retailers. If I've gone on and done some window shopping, their next email to me is going to be about the 5 items I looked at. They have pulled the analytics. They are not going to send me, hey, we're having a blowout at our store. I don't care. I looked at 5 items and I know you know what they are. So if you want a chance of me buying one, you need to send me information on that. These are things that we all have access now to, though. It's not just for the big retailers, but a lot of companies don't really take the time to set that up and to drill down. They just want to pump it out and say, this is what we offer. And they want you to dig and search. And people are like, you're lucky I even opened this email. Are you kidding me? Like, if I'm opening it, it needs to be curated. You figure out how to get it done, business owner, but it needs to be done if you want a chance to move them along. And maybe they don't purchase on the first one, but if you send them continuous follow-up emails about either the category of things they were looking at, something in relation to what they were looking at, you have a better chance.
Would you recommend also sort of talking, even if it's not directly the thing they were looking at, right? Because that's, I would say with Liz has a product business, right? And what you just kind of said strikes me more like for a product business that would work. When I think about a service business like mine, that, event planners, or I'm a HR consultant or things like that, it's sort of very nebulous sometimes what people want. They want to just kind of say, do you have the experience that I'm looking for to be able to provide me this service? Or I don't even really know what I want. I just know you're a person who could probably do the thing that I want. How do you make that differentiation really between a product business where I can then turn around and send you, the white chocolate champagne glass because that's what you looked at, versus, okay, I think maybe I need an audit, but I'm not sure on the service side.
So you can, one way is to look at who's been opening and clicking on certain things in previous emails. If the top of your top of your email, like you're starting from day one and you got a little list and you send that email out and say, okay, this is what I'm interested in. Or what are you interested in hearing from us? And you get a little bit of traction with that. And then your next campaign might still be a little broader, but it can still be structured in a way that speaks to each service you offer. And then you see what people are clicking on and you can put them sort of in that funnel. The other way that you can do it is by, if you feel like they are in the consideration stage of the customer journey, a very common way to help move that along is to send case studies and reviews about projects that you've worked on in that way. So like we have 4 service offerings. So all of our content that we put out is structured around those individually, so that when we go back and look at the reports, analytics, social content engagement, email engagement, we can get a pretty good idea of who's interested in what. And then we move those into part of the next category. If they're constantly clicking and you can tell they're engaged. So now we want them to consider us. So now we prove to them that we can do that. Here's our latest case study on website design and how it helped this client. Or here's our latest case study on X, Y, and Z and how it impacted. And then maybe at the bottom, you have reviews or testimonials as well. So there is a way to nurture a service-based audience into kind of moving them along. And anytime you're still doing these email campaigns, you can still put your other stuff at the bottom, but the meat of it should be, you know, the top, if they never get to the bottom, is what they've already been engaged in or what you feel like they might be interested in based on other activity. But you can still include other little things down there as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what I'm hearing is you're basically saying it's fine to put different things in the email. So an email doesn't necessarily, you said that before, but I'm hearing it a very different way now, which is it doesn't always have to be an ask. And that in terms of providing value, that could be anything up to and including a case study, which is not something that I would think to put into a list. And I think that that's an email. I'm sorry. I think that that's where I get stuck. It's sort of like, okay, well, what do I want to send you? What do I want to tell you? What is the information that I think it's important for you to have in this email? So that's interesting. What other kinds of things would you say we can include in emails? That's not the ask, because we're going to say the ask come eventually, but what are things that we can send in emails that are value-based, things that we think people might be interested in?
Absolutely. So you can also share industry insights that are niche down from well-respected sources. You know, here's our curation of what's happening currently with leadership in B2B companies. We thought you might be interested to learn about, you know, this industry report. You might be interested to know about the latest status report on, you know, what's happening. All of our industries have that. You know, most people are putting out a yearly report about, and some of them are good and some of them are not. And so you might take the most credible sources in your industry and say, here's what this well-respected thought leader had to say about, you know, leadership for 2021. Thought you might be interested. You can also include a very bullet point structured, these are the benefits. These are how we solve the pain points. Highlight it out, because to us, it seems so simple. And to them, they're like, this sounds good, but I don't know if this is going to work for me. You can also include a campaign that's frequently asked questions. You might have frequently asked questions on your website. Maybe they didn't think to click over there. And if you get them at the point where they're considering you, and now they get an email and one of your questions was top on their list, but they could not be bothered to get to your website to find it themselves, you have served it up to them. They are excited about that because they do not have to look for that. You just gave it to them. You just knew. You felt it. So you sent it to them and you said, hey, because I've been watching you open my emails and I've been watching you click and engage with stuff, but you haven't done. Okay, so you might be considering. So how can we help you? Well, let's send you some FAQs that are related to some very common objections or issues that people have. And then that's the campaign, and it's just laid out. So those type of things can help, but that is a lot more work on the business owner, but that's where we are. We can't rest on strategies of 5 years past time. We have to be creative and just figure out, at the end of the day, this person wants to know that I can solve their problem. What are some creative ways that I can show them that they've been engaged? I know they're interested. They keep opening the emails, or they keep engaging, they keep liking the comments, or they keep engaging with the content. So they're thinking about it. How do I get them over?
And you just got to keep trying, basically, is your point.
What
You do.
Yeah, and be patient. What do you think about, and I don't know if this is passé or not, but I still do it. What do you think about like, giveaways or, you know, contests and that type of thing for free merchandise and whatnot?
I think those can be good with an already engaged audience. I think it's better with an audience who is in that consideration phase. If that's a part of your business model, to hold contests and giveaways, they need to be structured to, number one, that you can track and you can keep track of who's participating in this, because even if the person isn't winning, someone is highly engaged if they have participated, if they have given up some information or tagged somebody else in the post as a means to win this contest. You want to keep that data because they are engaged, and you maybe move them to the next round even if they don't win. But I don't think they're a bad idea. I just think that they have to be carefully structured so that it makes sense. I don't usually recommend that out the gate. because you're dealing with a real cold audience if you're just starting, and you're going to get a lot of people that are just scrolling something and see free or a giveaway and sign up, and they're not going to be real engaged with the brand.
So yeah, so the idea is building deep engagement with them, building up the trust, like you were saying before.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have two questions. The first one is, what are some of your more favorite lead magnets, the ones that you think are working better in this environment? I mean, I don't know if I think any works that great in this environment, but I have used quizzes and I actually like those. I think those work really well to a certain extent because they are already targeted. But what are your thoughts around that?
So I think it depends on your industry. So in my industry, I think webinars are still really good lead magnets, so to speak. You have all different kinds. I don't necessarily think ebooks have the same effect as they once did because nobody wants to read. If you could get crafty and put your best ebook of past time in a podcast format or an audio format, so nobody has to have undivided attention, like they can just listen to this and do something else, that might be a good way to go. But I still think that templates are good. People want things that they can use, right? Somebody downloads a template, they can use that. I can start plugging things into this template that has solved a problem for me, whether that's time, whether it's, a template that automatically calculates stuff, whatever it may be, this is solving an immediate need for me. And that's what I want. So templates, webinars, I don't personally take quizzes very often, but that might be good for you. If you have the data to show that a quiz is working, I would keep doing quizzes and nurture that audience because it takes some interest to do a quiz. You know what I mean? Like I got to stop, I got to read it, I got to think about it for a second. So you have somebody that's highly engaged. When it comes to lead magnets, I think it's just contingent on your industry. Now, I think people get lazy and they want just the quickest, easiest lead magnet to create for them. And I don't think that's effective, especially in this environment. You have to figure out what is going to work for your audience and take the time to do that and do it properly. Industry reports are huge for the HR community to download it. I don't want to see an industry report. But people in that sector want to see an industry report.
We need to read industry reports so we know what's happening. I mean, Kelly, but yes, I get your point. Around that. So I like those ideas. I tend to find webinars work pretty okay as well. Depending on if the topic is really good and if you really aren't like super selling in it.
It's the title for me. The title for me, if the title is structured in a way that again sounds like it's going to solve an immediate problem for me, I'm in. If it's as vague as, how to grow your digital agency in 2021, that could be big picture, high level. Right now, for me, I'm more into the granular, like how to pitch digital services and appeal to the CMO and the CRO. Well, you got me. I'm in. I want to know that. Right. You know what I mean? Like that's a little more drilled down because it's a pain point that a lot of marketers have in-house or out in an agency, is that right now, marketers are being called to tap into more of the revenue. And this is a new thing. And all marketers are having to figure out, how do I prove my value? Okay, well, this lady says in 45 minutes, she's going to give me tips on how to prove my value and keep my job or keep my client. I'm with that.
And you're okay, because the headline you just basically said was pretty long. hearing it, right? And I'm curious about that, because you see all these things out there. Oh, be short, be punchy, be exciting. But you gave a lot of information, and it was a lot of words, and it might run on or whatever it may be. You might not be able to see that in a quick email. I'm curious about putting together a headline, because that's very interesting what you said.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a dance, and we won't get around that. I do think in a COVID environment where people are having, you know, it's the rubber meets the road, whatever business you're in. How do you make this work? And if somebody is saying that they can show you or teach you or give you a download, you need to tell me like real specific how that's going to help me, or else I'm going to keep scrolling. I'm not going to click. I don't have time to sit with a vague title, even if it's short and punchy. I want to know that this is going to solve my problem. I don't even want to click see more to see your little bullet points with the emojis. I want you to tell me out the gate at the top, this is the problem that we're solving on this call. And it is a dance because email has their regulations with the subject line. So maybe you get creative on how to say that in a short, punchy way. But the vague, standard, old school, like how to grow your business. And okay, but like how? What do you mean?
Right.
And I'm not going to do the work to find out.
Right. So to be more specific and maybe have some points as to what they are going to get out of it. Right.
Yes.
So what are my takeaways going to be? And it's specific enough. Okay, that's going to draw me in. That does draw me in personally. So
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's a skill, right? So that's a skill to be developed. And there are some of us who this is just not a skill that comes naturally for us. So are there tools that exist out there in the universe to help us try to put some of these together as we start to kind of build this skill? Because this is new for us. And if you're more of if you're in HR, HR is not marketing, although HR is about communication. So you do get that skill a little bit, but you know what I mean? Or if you're selling chocolate glasses, it's not marketing. So
yeah. Well, there are a lot of companies I've seen in the last probably 3 months that have popped up that specialize in creating content. And I don't necessarily mean offshore, quick things like that. I mean, sometimes they use AI generation to help you come up with that. You put in the creative brief and then they spit you back some options. Sometimes it's an actual team you can be working with. So if you're a small business and you can't hire a full-time content writer, those are some things that you can look into. And it's just a matter of a Google search. I haven't made note necessarily of them, but I've seen floating around probably 3 that weren't around at the top of the year. Mm-hmm. And so I think to your point, a lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, how do I get the messaging right? If I can't afford to hire a full-time content writer, I still got to get the messaging right, because essentially, in addition to the creative for any sort of social post, you got to have your wordplay on point. You've got to be able to craft the message in a way that speaks to the audience. And if you're not skilled at that, you have to get that from somebody else. You have to be willing to hire somebody to put that together. It could be email subject lines. It could be the actual email newsletter content. It could be social media posts. It could be ad posts. It could be a few things.
So I have another question, kind of going back to the list a little bit. What if you've left your list dormant, like you hadn't touched it for a year, let's say? You got them in, you never did anything with them. How do you go about re-engaging, or do you just sort of say, you know what, never mind, I'm going to leave that alone and just start fresh? What do you recommend?
I would definitely recommend a re-engagement campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I would do is batch out a few lists so you don't find yourself in this predicament a second time after you have already ghosted these people or not engaged. And then you get the bug on a Sunday night, like, okay, tomorrow I'm starting over. I'm going to do a campaign. And then you fall off again for 3 months, right?
Right.
So I would recommend as a first step, batching a few. So you get a little more room. So you're not under the gun every week or every 2 weeks to be putting one out, because things happen and they come up, but you still want to maintain that consistency. So if on that Sunday, instead of I'm firing it off tomorrow, you sit down and say, okay, these are going to be the next, 6 campaigns for this quarter. and you can batch them and schedule them, then you're good money for 3 months. Like you give yourself room to be able to, see if they work, test and tweak, and also create for the next batch. And your first re-engagement campaign can be a reintroduction of your company. And that can be an opportunity to ask them what they want to hear from you. Let them know you appreciate them being a part of your community. In full transparency, I want to make sure that, I am, or we are providing the most value. Let me know what you would really like to hear from us.
Yeah.
How can we help you? How can we be of service? But don't do that and then be gone again for another 2 months. You probably want to start over from scratch after that. Yeah.
Yeah, either do it or just let it be, right?
Just let it be, yeah.
I hear that. Yeah, it's excellent. Kelly, thank you so much. That has been excellent. So before we let you go, any sort of last tips, tricks, anything that you think is really important for our audience to hear as it relates to this topic?
I don't know. I think probably the most important one is that we just touched on that. Batching your content, staying consistent, staying focused on value, and cleaning your list. Do not get caught up in, I have this many people, I don't want to let them go, because you will be penalized by the different platforms. Google, Microsoft, they are cracking down on deliverability. Your stuff won't even be delivered. If people stop opening or stop engaging or start unsubscribing or blocking or this, that, and third, they will start to penalize you. Don't get hung up on the numbers, get hung up on engaging your audience. If it's 5 people, if it's 20 people, if you start off with a 200-person list and these people unsubscribe, 100 unsubscribe, okay, move on. And then reevaluate how you're building your list. Are you building quality people? Don't get hung up or scared or give up on email marketing because all these people unsubscribed. Figure out how you're going about building a quality list in the first place and make sure that it's a little more targeted. But those 3 things, if you stay consistent, if you provide value and you keep your list clean, you will have success, and give it time. You can have a successful email marketing arm of your business.
Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much. I learned so much today. Didn't you?
Yeah, that was excellent. I mean, I was asking, all my questions were actually for me.
Well, good. I'm so glad. Thank you guys for having me on the show.
No, it was great to have you. Thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Absolutely. So brandmethod.com, BRNDMETHOD.com. And we're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So please feel free to reach out and connect. info@brandmethod.com, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
All right. Awesome. Thank you again, Kelly, so much. And thank you so much for being our Badass of the Week. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.